It was heard by millions. A guitar sound so amazing that it drove an entire generation of players insane trying to copy it. It wasn't a magical vacuum tube, and it wasn't a specially wired pickup. And the Tonewood? Yeah, that was a guitar body that somebody threw in the trash. This is the real story behind one of the most unique guitar sounds in metal, and why almost everybody got it completely wrong. I heard Dokken for the very first time on Wednesday, May 28th, 1986 at Cobo Arena in downtown Detroit. I had no idea who the hell they were other than the fact that they were opening up for Judas Priest, the reason I was at that show. But the second that they hit the stage with Unchained the Night, I was completely blown away. It was an absolutely unforgettable show, especially when they announced that, you might have heard this one on the radio, and then they tore into In My Dreams. And suddenly it clicked. Yeah, I had heard them on the radio, but I had no idea that the song that I liked was by the band standing right in front of me. That's just how it worked in the pre-internet days. Now, besides being an outstanding live band, the thing that really set Dokken apart in the 80s was the guitar player, George Lynch. Not only was he an incredible player, he also had a sound that nobody else could touch. And I don't mean forum hype nobody else could touch, I mean actually unreachable. Nobody could get close to the sounds that George could cook up. And of course, this being the 80s, the rumors and bullshit were rampant. Okay, let's be honest, that part hasn't changed at all. But I do remember the guitarist in my band shortly after he purchased a JCM 800 telling me, dude, I had the perfect George Lynch tone dialed in last night. Yeah, right, Greg. Funny how you couldn't seem to get it today. Maybe the wind was right last night, or maybe you're just full of shit. Turns out you do need just a tiny bit more than a JCM 800 to nail the Lynch tone. This sound was raw, it was wild, and nobody could get it, no matter how hard they tried. And I'm going to show you how to do it in just a minute. But I want to really make something clear first. Most signature guitar sounds were not created by making a pact with Satan. They're usually just simple combinations of the right gear in the right place in the signal chain. Guitar players, however, tend to really overcomplicate things. Like exhibit fucking A right here. Here's a picture of Ed Van Halen in the studio. Everything is carefully labeled except, of course, what speakers are in the cabinets, because that would never matter, right? It turns out it's really not a big mystery to nail the Van Halen sound. Just get a Plexi equivalent, plug it into a cab loaded with EVH greenbacks, drop a cheap Colleen EQ pedal in front, drop the lows, boost the mids, and crank the output. Yeah, no big deal. Just don't stand in front of the amp if you value your hearing. Now, I drove myself completely insane trying to get the Clayman sound. If you want to go back about 20 years on the Andy Sneap forum, there is a very long thread that I started about it. I learned the mic technique, I had the 5150, I even went out and dug up an angle cap, which turns out had the shitty Chinese V30s in it, but that's a story that's already been well documented on the show. But I still couldn't quite nail the grind. I got close, but never all the way there. Now, I even got to meet one of Studio Fredman's assistants who'd worked on the Inflamed stuff at NAMM a couple of years back. Now, to that gentleman in particular, my apologies, your name has completely eluded me, but I do appreciate you making some time to talk to me. And I did grill him about that guitar sound, and his response was, well, it wasn't really anything complicated, we just mic'd the cab. And then I saw one of Yuj Valverita's videos, and he's doing a piece on that kind of sound, and he's absolutely fucking nailing it. And I'm sitting here thinking, I don't get it. I'm doing everything right and I'm still missing something. And then I notice he's using a Boss Super Overdrive pedal with the tone cranked up at about 3 o'clock. Now me, I'd been using the Sneap Forum approved overdrive, the Maxon OD808, because of course I was. Now I mentioned this to an engineer friend of mine, Chris Rowan, and he says, could it really be that simple? Of course it is. It's so simple and so common that nobody even thought to mention it because it should have just been obvious. Remember what I said about Van Halen and EQ pedals? Same principle here. The Boss is boosting things in a different place in the mid-range and a little bit higher, and it's much more aggressive. That's the secret to the snarl. These days I just hit the GBG switch on the Zuta amp and I get this. The lesson here is that if I had just tried something different, instead of doing exactly what everybody else on the forum did, I probably could have saved myself an awful lot of time by experimenting with things that other people weren't using. So how the hell did George Lynch craft a tone that nobody could ever replicate? Was it a magical set of pickups? No, of course not. Although I'm absolutely certain somebody made an awful lot of money selling signature pickups to kids who thought a screaming demon was going to magically make them sound like Lynch. Because that's how this works, right? Swap a pickup, instantly become a guitar god. I mean, just listen to all of those records out there, absolutely loaded with perfect George Lynch sound-alike tone. Yeah, exactly. And of course, it must be George's magical hands, right? After all, we keep hearing the same bullshit, the sound is in the hands. That's the one line everybody loves. Funny thing about that though, go put on the original version of It's Not Love from the album Under Lock and Key. That is the signature George Lynch sound. Now go listen to the 2010 re-recorded version. Same player, same hands, definitely not the same sound. Yeah, it still sounds like George, but it's watered down. It's polite, it's sanitized. That dangerous, instantly recognizable tone that made everybody lose their minds in the 80s, gone. Vanished without a trace. Because apparently, the hands forgot how to do it? So what happened? What was going on with those early Dokken records that made them so special? Because this wasn't about talent. George has that in spades, and it wasn't about boutique gear either. The sound came from the absolute last place any guitar player would even think to look. And to tell this story properly, I'm going to quote the guy who actually made those records, Michael Wagner.
George mentioned that he always gets a great tone with his Fostex 4-track recorder when it's in total overdrive. So I asked him to bring it in. So after the 530 EQ, everything was sent to the Fostex 4-track, which lived under a packing blanket under the console so nobody could see it. The Fostex was on stun, completely overdriven, and then sent onto the 3M 32-track digital machine from there.
Let that sink in for a second. One of the most iconic guitar sounds in metal history didn't come from some rare amp, secret pickup, or mythical tone wood. It came from a shitty little Fostex 4-track cassette recorder. Abused so hard it was basically crying for help and literally hidden under a blanket so nobody would know it was even there. Now, here's where it gets even better. I mentioned this to my very good friend Steve Chason, who helped me build this studio and has made a bunch of guest appearances on the show. And without missing a beat, his response was, I think I've got one of those. Now, I don't exactly have the space to set up the 16 mics and multiple cabinets like they did for Under Lock and Key, which honestly kind of sucks because with this console back here, I could absolutely do it, no problem whatsoever. Maybe, just maybe, I'm gonna get lucky this year and finally get to build a bigger studio. Hey, we'll see. What I do have though are two pieces of gear that actually matter for this experiment. First of all, a UREI 530 EQ, a stereo 9-band graphic EQ that Michael Wagner swears is the best guitar EQ ever made. Not vibey, not mojo, just brutally effective at putting guitars exactly where they need to live in a mix. And second, Steve's dad's Fostex X26 cassette 4-track. Now this thing is ancient, it's beat to hell and barely works, and if it were a car, it'd be failing emissions and leaking oil in the driveway. And yet, when you abuse it just the right way, it does exactly what modern gear tries really hard not to do. And when you mix that Fostex in with the Zuta amp on channel 1 with everything cranked all the way, this is where things stop being polite and start getting interesting. Now, this isn't about replacing the amp. This isn't about some magic distortion box. This is about adding a layer of pure, wrong, completely unintended chaos underneath a perfectly good guitar sound. The same way that they did it back then. Stick around to the end of the video and I'm going to show you how you can add this to your own guitar sound. All right. I don't want to bore you guys, and I don't want George getting mad at me like, no, you're playing it wrong, you fucking idiot. Anyway, close enough, just for demonstration purposes. So what we got going on right here is the Zuta amp. I'm in channel 1 with everything just dimed except for the main output. And I've got a couple of things going on here. We've got the Rev Cab with those wonderful Celestion EVH speakers, the Eddie Van Halen speakers. And mic'd up with that, I've got an SM57 and a Beyerdynamic M160 is fast becoming my combination of choice. And then we've got things kind of routed through the console to here, and those two are going to one fader here, and then here, the second fader there, that's looping in the Fostex. And let me show you the difference of what this is doing. Take it out. Put it back in. It's one of those things you're not going to notice until it's gone. Let me go over to the desktop and show you exactly what's going on. Oh yeah, don't forget to stick around to the end of the video and I'm going to show you how to get a Neural Amp Modeler capture this for absolutely free. Okay, so I did this clip with Christian Vey a few weeks back, and Christian's not exactly what you call a metal player, but even then, this whole system actually works and works pretty damn well. We're using the Carnivore speaker. We're using one of those EV12Ms or Ls or whatever the hell they are, the really heavy ones. And we had a Roswell cab mic in front of that. And then we had the Fostex going as well. And here's what we got. So here's 57. And the cab mic. And then the Fostex and underneath it. Now what we're doing is we're taking the signal from the 57 and then we're routing it through the Fostex and then back into the board onto its own track. And once we combine all of those, this is where it gets interesting. So we weren't trying to get George Lynch tone, but we're definitely getting a really cool effect. This is one of those things where if you mute it, you're going to notice it's missing. But if you solo it up, it's just not a pretty thing to listen to. But damn, does it ever work great. When you mix it with other mics. Very cool indeed. Once again, it's just one of those things that if it's not there, you're going to notice it's not there. And all it is right there. So just real quick, I've got two NAMM universals going on. The first one, this is my amp sim. It's got the bong ripper and those wonderful black back impulse responses. Those are all available through the home studio cheat code. And then in parallel, I've got that whole thing being sent to a second track right here with a NAMM universal running Mr. Even Less Friendly. And that's going into an EQ. And yeah, without that EQ, it is a little bit nasty, like it should be. But if we take a little bit of subtractive EQ and take some of that fizz out and then blend it in with the other amp, we get something really cool. Do yourself a favor, download it, check it out for yourself. Of course, the whole point of this isn't to geek out about gear in solo mode. The whole point is what this does in a mix, because that is the sound that inspired an entire generation of players to pick up a guitar in the first place. Is it going to be exact? Hell no. It's not the same Fostex model, and it's not the same room, and I've only got space for 2 mics instead of an entire science experiment. But that's not the point. Let's listen to what this actually does to a full mix. That's the entire argument. The reason George Lynch's sound stood out is simple. He wasn't doing what was pre-approved. He didn't follow the rule book. He didn't chase what everybody else was chasing, and he didn't care what gear was supposed to be used for guitar. He took something that was meant to make shitty home recordings and used it in a completely unintended way, and that sent everybody off on a wild goose chase for decades. Now, I can only imagine that this video is going to make the prices of those old Fostex 4-tracks skyrocket on the used market because the internet is absolutely riddled with greedy bottom feeders looking to make a fast buck off gullible morons. Block letter 5151, anybody? So before this turns into yet another round of stupid, let's nip that shit right in the butt, because I'm going to give away a free Neural Amp Modeler capture that I did of the Fostex. Once again, that's absolutely free. Now, in honor of George Lynch and his signature guitar track, Mr. Scary, I'm going to call this one Mr. Even Less Friendly. Download it, but let me be very clear about something. Do not use this on its own, because it will sound like shit. Remember, this is not an amp, it's a texture. Blend it with another amp capture. Use it underneath, use it sparingly, but make sure you abuse it. Because the whole point isn't to sound like George Lynch. The point is to stop copying what everybody else is doing and break the rules of it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find something that's actually yours. Now you know.
And knowing is half the battle.